Hi, I'm Holly, I'm a writer, and I haven't done like a bookish video in a little while, so I thought I would do an updated TBR because I'm currently working through every book on my shelf, and I'm still allowed to buy new books, but I have a lot of unread books, especially because I just got a bunch for like my birthday and stuff, and that's a cat hair. But I want to work through all of the ones that I own because I feel like it is cheaper, and also there are a lot of books that I really want to read that I already own. So I'm starting with, very simply, I think it's literally like 6 books, and one of them I'm already halfway through, but I'm gonna do it. I think there's one book that I haven't read that I've done video, like a TBR video on, and I almost put it in this one, but I was like, you know what, I'm not in the mood for it right now. It's Ship of Destiny by Robin Hobb, which I still haven't read. All the others from like my last 2 videos, I'm pretty sure I've either read them or I've like tried to read them, DNF them, stuff like that. So I'm just gonna go in with like some new ones, and I say new ones, I've probably talked about these before. I know at least 2 of them are in fact, I think maybe 3 of them were on my like 10 before the end video, and then I didn't do that, and I don't know if I read 10 more books or not. I don't think that I did. I kind of slowed down towards the end of the year, but the ones that I read weren't these ones. So the first one I'm going to just talk about very quickly because I'm already in the middle of this one is Farewell My Lovely. This is my cat. Hi, sweetie. Okay. This one is the second book in the Philip Marlowe books by Raymond Chandler. I asked for The Big Sleep for my birthday. Actually what happened, I feel like this is interesting information. So I actually had like a list of books that I sent to like my parents, and I was like, this is books that I want for like my birthday or Christmas and blah 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 blah. I got all of those books for one birthday. And like I'm grateful because it meant that I didn't get, that's my cats, sorry if you heard that. Having 2 cats, it means that there's always one of them ready to ambush the other. But I had like this whole list, and some of them were books that I had already read and loved. Like, for example, I didn't have a copy of Remarkably Bad Creatures. You may remember that I actually talked about that and I didn't have a copy of it. I now do. I now have a copy of Lessons in Chemistry. I have 2 copies of Bright Young Women because there was a bit of a mishap with family organisation, so I have a hardcover and I have paperback, and I'm keeping them both because my dad got me one and my sister got me one, and I don't want to get rid of the gifts that they got me. It'll be fine. I'll probably annotate one at some point or something, which I usually like to use a fresh copy for, just because I have too many memories with the first copy I have, you know. But I got The Big Sleep, that's where I'm going with this, and I also got it in a set of 3. This one was in that set, and then also like the 6th book in the series. Apparently there's like 8, and I didn't get the 3rd one, so I actually bought the 3rd one recently because I was kind of apprehensive to read this one in case, because I only read the first one in December. Like, I read it early December and it was the best book that I read in December for me. I really enjoyed it. So I didn't want to read this one until I had the next one, just in case. So I bought the next one and then I decided to read this one. It's only like 300 pages. The other one literally is like even shorter. I think it's like 250. I'm 150 pages in. I literally was so slow the first 2 times I read it. The first day I had a bit of a migraine. The second day I just didn't like start reading until really late. But then yesterday I read like 80 pages because I was just like, this is really interesting, I want to keep reading. And I was like, I'm too tired, I need to go to bed, stop. But I really like these. I think that the style of writing, obviously, this is an old book. It's very like, I can't remember what it's called. I think it's like Egg Carton or something. I looked it up. There's like it's got like a name for the style of detective fiction that it is. Oh, hard boiled. Something to do with eggs. But it's about this detective, the series, and he just solves cases and he's like a private detective. This one is kind of interested. Like, the way that it's sort of set up is really fun. It's not, I think you can read them all as standalones, right? But I'm reading them in order anyway. This is really inspirational. Like, I can't talk today. Sorry, I've got a cold. My throat's a bit weird. But basically, as if that's not the case always. But he basically is a private detective who gets kind of wrapped up in these bigger than they seem cases, which is very typical. I think that's like the whole thing, is that there's like things that happen. But he tends to sort of go off, and different cases that he's working on are connected. This one is about he sees a guy, newly, like a convict who has been released, kills somebody in front of him, and it is connected, he believes, to this other guy who hired him to be a bodyguard who ends up dead. That's kind of a spoiler, but also I feel like it's not actually that big of a spoiler. I'm 150 pages in. I like to try not to guess what's happening with them. I just don't think that that's... but also I think it's fun to see how it comes together. It is old, that was the point I was going to make. The wording that it uses is, this book is a child of the 1940s. I think what they've done, it says the N-word that was like the common word for how to describe black people at the time, but then there's a use of an N-word which is just, it's not even shown, it's just like dashed out. And I'm assuming that that's just like fully the slur rather than like the outdated term. So it does kind of protect. However, there is also another word which, for Japanese people, which is used, which I suppose is less offensive than the other one to see written down, but also like, I don't know. I don't know how they decided to like censor certain bits. To be honest, I think that I'm not for censorship in that sense in books, because I think that it's important to be able to see exactly what the author wrote, because it, as a literary person who likes to analyze stuff, I like to understand exactly what's being said without having to sort of make any kind of assumption, because I think that it helps you to understand exactly, like for example, the main character saying those words, it gives him an image that makes me not like him as much. And to be fair, he's not the most likable guy anyway, but I think that it also is like, if you are sensitive to stuff like that, obviously I'm not, I do appreciate that for other people's sake. But this cover is like attracting all of my fingerprints. But I'm liking it. I prefer this cover to the other one, which is weird because I bought the other one partially because of the cover that I have. But I'm really enjoying it. I'll probably be finished with this in like 2-3 days. But I thought I'd add it in anyway, because this like series is one that I'm probably gonna work my way through as and when I can afford to buy new books. I actually got a gift card for Christmas, but I'm planning on buying and reading eventually the new Jeanette McCurdy. My bookshop, my local, has signed copies, so I'm going to try and get one of those tomorrow actually, which, busy day tomorrow. I'm getting my blood taken and I'm going to a bookshop. Fun. Yeah, so I think I'm gonna probably have that on my TBR, but not officially because I don't know when I'm gonna read that. And I have some books that I want to buy for my dissertation, which is a bit up in the air. I'm gonna do a health video soon. If you've been watching me and you like happen to remember me talking about like my health and stuff, there have been some developments, not necessarily great ones, not necessarily bad ones. It's more about the way that it impacts my life in general, rather than like the health itself. So I might just do a video, because now that I have ruled stuff out, we know what it is. Like the doctor who I spoke to this Thursday was like, yeah, that sounds exactly like this. So fun. Did I get a letter that said all of that stuff? Or did I check the app or something? Or did I dream that? Something that's really, sorry, this is a little tangent, but something that I've noticed is that I can read writing in my dreams. Like, I know that people say, oh, there's no writing in dreams. There is. Did I make that up? I might need to check that. But anyway, I'll do an update because there's stuff, but I'm still gonna do stuff for my education is my point, because I care about the topic. I'm just gonna adjust myself. Sorry, I put myself in like the corner of the chair because my cat was sitting with me and she was like really anxious too, so she was just pacing around. And then because I was fiddling with my camera, she decided to look out the window instead. So, you know, fun. But basically, I want to read some books for my dissertation, which will also just be interesting in general, but they cost a lot of money, so I'm going to use my gift card to spend money on those because they're non-fiction and they're the academic kind, which just, it's like ridiculous money, and I hate spending that kind of money on a book that isn't like for pleasure. It's the way that my brain works. Sorry. I would very happily, and I have spent money on furniture recently because I'm like, I love that. But I will not spend money on a book for my university education. Okay. Yeah. That book is good so far. I liked the first one. I would recommend them, but again, they're old. That one, I think the first one's from like 1938. This one's from like 1940. I don't know how far they go because obviously that's a 2-year gap between them. So I don't know if the other one's coming out quicker. I think the last one is like it's considerably thicker. The one that I have anyway, I don't know. I think there were 2 more. But I would recommend them if you're sort of interested in this kind of like old detective-y story. They are like, they're not the best thing that I've ever read purely because I'm reading them with a modern mindset, but I really like them and I think they're kind of fun. And as somebody, I may or may not have an idea for a detective story. So that's what I was gonna say, they're inspirational to me because they proved that like my style of writing could potentially work really well, because the way that he writes is, in my opinion, it's very simple, but there's like certain kinds of description and it's quite funny. There are certain things that I've been posting them on my reading Instagram. It's like my reading diary. I take pictures of stuff and then I post it there because otherwise my camera roll will be full. But there are certain things where it's quite funny. Like there's one where it's like, apart from all of that, after describing this guy's appearance in detail, he looks like the kind of guy who would wear the clothes that were just described, which I thought was quite funny. There are little things like that where it's just like the humor is very dry, and I want to say English, right? Like it's set in America. I'm assuming Raymond Chandler is American, but the humor is very much like the kind that I like, and sometimes like it shows up in my work. I say that, I don't think that I'm especially funny, but also I have had a few people who they like certain things because of the way in my books, because of, you know, them being like, that's kind of funny. So I try to make it entertaining in that way. But yeah, that's what I'm reading. One that I've actually read a little bit of, there's no bookmark in it, so don't be too confused. This also smells really good, by the way. The first day that I read it, the migraine thing, it wasn't helped because I was like, and basically it smells like the other book, which makes sense because they were part of a set. But I was like, I'm getting like sensory memory of the migraine I had when I tried to read the first book for the first time. So I guess I'm kind of cursed to read these books when I have a migraine and then be like, well, I can't get into it because I've got a migraine. This one, doesn't have really a strong smell. I've had this for quite a while. This is Johnny Panic and the Bible of Dreams. This is a short story and like essay collection, I think. Is it short stories? This is Sylvia Plath. Oh, hang on. Is it just short stories and prose pieces? Excerpts from her notebooks, stories from Lily Library. So this is just a short story collection by Sylvia Plath. She mostly did poetry, so this is like between this and the Bell Jar, I think this is like all of her prose. I literally don't even know exactly how far in. It is like noted somewhere. But I was reading this to avoid reading. I don't know. I was reading it to avoid reading something, and I think I either DNF'd that book or I Gone with the Wind. I think the last time that I was talking about it, I was like, oh, I quite like Gone with the Wind. It's not that I don't enjoy it in theory, but the text is so small on the page. It's like 2 pages worth of text per page, so it takes me ages to make a dent in it. And I counted, it's like genuinely like 100 pages of this book is her being in love with somebody who she finds out is getting married, telling him that she loves him turning her down, and then her marrying somebody else, having a baby, him dying, her being really depressed, being sent away, but coming back because she didn't like where she was, and then being sent away again. That's 100 pages of the book, except it isn't like that. The first like 70 pages are her finding out that this guy is getting married, going to a party and telling him that she loves him. The next like, honestly, it might not even be like 30 pages, it might literally be way less than that, are her going and getting married and having a baby and the guy dying and then her going away and then coming back and then going away again. The pacing is wild, and I get it, it's a classic, but I was just not in the mood. I think this is the book that made me not read so much in the last part of the year. Like, I just was like, I have to get away from this. So I started reading this, but the looming book just made me like still, like I had to like get a fresh start. So I want to give this a proper go, and try to actually finish it when I'm not quite so in the Gone with the Wind mood. But yeah, basically this is short stories and they're all kind of different. I'm not sure how I feel about them yet. There's ones where I don't dislike them and then there's ones where I'm like, eh. But I think that it's still interesting to me to read this. I'm not a huge short story collection person. But yeah, I don't know what to say about this one. But it's Sylvia Plath, so there it is. The next one is also, I believe, short stories. Let me just see. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I read somewhere that it was, and that made me not want to read it. So if it's not, I'm actually going to be super annoyed, and I have a feeling now that it's not. That makes me really... Okay. This is Franny and Zoe. This I bought because I actually really liked The Catcher in the Rye. I will say, if you want to hear me talk about The Catcher in the Rye, you should like follow my podcast because we're gonna maybe be talking about The Catcher in the Rye. But I read The Catcher in the Rye honestly probably like 6 years ago, which is crazy, but this is a book which it says here it's a portrait of the 2 members of his fictional Glass family. I don't know what that means. However, I'm assuming I will by the end of this book. I have heard good things about this. I've heard that it's kind of fun, and I liked The Catcher in the Rye. I don't know what to say about I literally don't know anything about this book. But yeah, I like The Catcher in the Rye. I think that his writing is really easy. I actually recommended The Catcher in the Rye to my mum because she bought me a copy not realising I had one, and I was like, you should keep this and you should read this. So she is reading it, and she said that it was good. And that's like, my mum isn't a huge like classics reader because of I think there's like, okay, it's not that classics are inaccessible, but their writing obviously has a very different style depending on when and who the book was sort of written and by. And I think that when you're not necessarily a fan of literature in general and you have like certain books that you like and you don't really know, like for me, for example, if I went into a bookshop, I would be basically all over the shop looking around, and if something caught my eye, whether it was the name of the book or the cover or like the concept on the jacket, for me that is how I pick a book. And I think that like when you consider that Narcissus and Goldman, for example, I picked that up because the title, I was like, oh, Narcissus, like, and then the cover was, I don't hate it now, but at the time I was like, eh. But then I thought, you know what, the writing sounds interesting, the plot of the book sounds interesting, and then I read like the first page to see if the writing, because it was a modern classic, which I love modern classics. I don't know if you can tell, behind me there's a few. Obviously I actually have way more the black classics, what are they called? Doesn't matter, does not matter. But basically I like them. So I see when I pick one up, I see literary fiction, I pick it up. Now I'm starting to see crime thrillers and pick them up. I have pretty varied tastes, and so I'm not super afraid of trying new things. A lot of readers aren't like that, especially if they don't read a lot, because when you think about it, like if I read 60 books last year, I read 50 the year before, it obviously like is a lot easier for me to pick one up that I might not like, because I've also got then like 40 odd other books that I can be safe with. Whereas if you only read like a few books a year, and that's like when you're really trying to read and you enjoy it, it's obviously going to be really off-putting if you try something and you don't have that enjoyment of it, I think that there just for me is this like understanding of that when it comes to my mum. So in general, but like especially when it comes to my mum, because I know that that's true for her. She works full time, she is very tired and old, and obviously she also has other stuff that she needs to do, including, we spend a lot of time together. I tend to recommend her books that she might enjoy because they're more simple. The Bell Jar, she was like, oh, well, if that's your favourite book, I'll try reading it. And I was like, well, it's a really simple book to read, and it is. Same with The Catcher in the Rye. If you ever want like me to recommend easy to class, like books that are really easy to read but that have either, the classic status, or just in general, they're books that are really like good quality books objectively, and that you can read them and really put a lot of thought into them but without having to struggle to understand them. I think that is something that I would be probably good at, because that's like my thing. I'm currently writing, if you don't know me, a literary fiction novel. It's about a pop star, so it's very like got issues of things like wealth and privilege and just in general like a fun vibe, but also with the darker underside of serious mental health issues. And it just is like a really interesting exploration from my perspective of this character who I don't really like as a person, but it's really fun to write and I really enjoy doing it. I haven't written yet today, but I think that it's kind of just like something that I really like doing. I think that reading books like that is something that really influences my work, and so my work is like that. It's very simple in its language and stuff, and it's not difficult to understand what's going on, but there's also depth to it, and there's like stuff specifically that I say or do in my writing because of like the implications of it from like a deeper perspective. I talked about this in my video where I started my book, and I talked about the openings of books and how to create one if you're really stuck on it. And I mentioned that the first line of one of my books is mentioning that this location is under cypress trees, and that that's intentional because of the symbolism of cypress trees as being associated with the Greek god of death and the underworld. And basically the story is a tragedy. I don't know if I've ever said that. I think I must have, surely. But it is supposed to be a tragedy. It's supposed to be based, you know, one of the characters is she's literally described as being like a Greek heroine. That is like her whole thing, right? So it's very intentional, but not everyone would understand that. But it also gives a sort of idea of the setting because it's set in Tuscany, where that's a very popular kind of tree. So for me, that sort of stuff's really good, but I think The Catcher in the Rye is a really interesting one, and I'm hoping that this will be interesting for the same sort of reasons as all of the stuff that I've just said, where there's a lot to be thought about it, but it's not super intense to read necessarily from like, you know, wading through unnecessary description. The Catcher in the Rye though, yeah, if you haven't read it or you have and you want to hear my thoughts on it, we may be doing a podcast episode on it for the next season of the podcast. And I've just realised that both of those books have green spines. That's cute. The next one, it's also very short. I've gone with kind of short books for the start of the year because I've actually read 2 books this year. The first one was the Jurassic Park sequel, which I actually rated fairly highly, and then I read The Compound as an ebook, and I'm going to be buying the physical book of that. I really enjoyed it. I thought that that might be a possible comp for my book. I don't know if it is. I might do it as one, but I think that there's a sort of vibe that I'm going for with my beginning of the year reading, and it's that I want to get a few books out of the way that I've been super like desperate to read for a while, but also like the shorter ones, because there's no reason why I shouldn't read some of the shorter ones, because later during the year I know I'm going to want to read some of the longer ones. I know I want to read Crime and Punishment this year. I know I want to read Anna Karenina this year. I know that I really want to get through Les Mis as much as is possible. There are a lot of books that are hefty ones that I want to read. I've decided I'm not going to do any rereads except for The Catcher in the Rye, which is for the podcast. But I want to not reread because it takes up quite a lot of time. And so I'm just gonna, you know, read my new books that I've not read, or books that maybe I just don't remember at all, and hope to get through as many as possible. So the next one is very short, is the point that I'm trying to make. Slaughterhouse-Five. This one, I'm very interested in it. I read his Pity the Reader, which is a book about writing. You okay, sweetie? I'm gonna have to go help the cat into bed because she's being like the worst person ever at it. Quite pathetic the way that she was trying to do that. She's become incapable because I've started to do it for her. She actually like came over to look at me as I was approaching. But yeah, basically this book, I really loved his writing book. It's crazy to me because I think I read it like 3 years ago now. No, 2 years ago. I don't know, I read it a while ago. But I really enjoyed it, and there are things that really stuck with me. Things like remembering that his books took time and that it wasn't that he rushed them. Remembering that, like, you know, sometimes a book that's really important to you will mean you know, so much that sometimes it's difficult to get out there. Sorry, I just noticed that there's like an illustration somewhere in this book. There. Interesting. But yeah, this is a classic. I had 2 copies of this. One of them was really, like, completely broken down though. So I had to get a different one. But this is one of those books that you hear everything about. I know what it's about, but I don't. I know that this is the one that took him a really, really long time to do. And I know that it is his arguably most famous. And I just am so excited to try it. I also would really like to trial. He has Galapagos, I'm pretty sure is his. And the cover for that's really cute. It looks like a postcard, which I actually have a book that's like that. And I just love those covers. He has the one with Ice 9. Is that Cat's Cradle or is that 2 different books? Anyway, he has books that I want to read, but I thought I would start with this one because if I don't gel with his style, I would rather have read this book than the others. You know what I mean? Because then I don't have to push myself to read more of his work if I don't get on with his style, whilst also, you know, the heavy hitter has been taken out. I think that it should be, I think the reason why I haven't read this yet, honestly, is just because in my last video, I said that I wanted to read Catch-22. I read 100 pages and I was like, I get it, I'm not enjoying this, I'm gonna DNF. In my head, these were like the 2 books. It was this and it was Catch-22. I was gonna read them and that was gonna be like my like, you know, and then I didn't enjoy the other one. So I kind of got put off. But there's no reason for me to believe that I would be put off by this one. And I think because I've read the book where he gave his writing advice, I feel like even though a lot of that wasn't written by him, I don't know, maybe I feel kind of like I do know his writing, even if I don't. And I feel like it's more going to be in tune with what I think than with Catch-22. Because I didn't know anything about Catch-22. I didn't know anything about the author. I didn't know what kind of book it was going to be. And then I was just like kind of disappointed quite a lot, actually. I was very excited for it. And then it wasn't what I wanted. This one I think is going to be what I thought that was going to be. And obviously that's the reason why I've been struggling to pick it up. But I'm going to make myself because it's very short. It's literally like, not even 200 pages. 170 something pages. That, like, why not, you know? And I just think that it would be nice to get a few books read at the start of the year, as I said, so I have a bit of a reservoir to make sure that, because it's not that I care so much about how many books I read in a year, it's that I want to try and get through what I own as quickly as possible so that I can be free from having to just read books on my shelf, right? And so I am aiming to read at least 50 books a year just to get through what I have in a decent time frame. So it's not that I just care like about the amount of books that I read in a year, but I think reading some of the shorter ones will mean that I won't feel quite as discouraged about how many I have because I'll have read more in a quicker time frame, and then I can just focus on the longer ones and I won't care so much if I'm not reading as much in a year because I've read pages, right? And I think pages sometimes is more impressive because like you could say that you read 50 books and if they're kids' books, valid for you to count them. But if they literally have like 4 pages of text, it's not quite the same. So I'm just trying not to care too much about the numbers, but also I do want to actually make progress. And I think that starting with like these ones, because they're small, but they're intimidating. So if I can get these out of the way, I can read other small but intimidating ones. I still have Lolita to read, which I really want to, but I'm also kind of afraid because I'm like, what if I'm really so disgusted by it that I just... But I think that it, you know, it would make sense to me that I would just try and get through some of the shorter ones, especially the ones that I've had for a while and that I'm basically not reading for no reason. This is also the same with this next one. This is Pizza Girl. I bought this, let me see when it came out. It was 2020. This one smells like, it smells like a hardcover book, and I don't know how to explain that. But this, I have no idea what it's about. I don't really care what it's about. I love the cover. I was like, that's really cute. I have to buy this right now. I loved the hardback because the cover is one that goes onto the spine, so you can see it a little bit better with a hardback than a paperback. But this is just super cute, I think. And I've heard good things, and it has the kind of writing. So let me just actually see what it's about, because I feel like... Okay, so it's about a teenage girl who works as a pizza delivery person, but she's pregnant. And she's like kind of in a situation. I feel like this is just one of those books that I'm gonna really enjoy, and I've put it off for years because like I think this is one of those books that I'm kind of intimidated by, because what if I don't like it? What if I read this and then I am disappointed and I like saved it for so long, and then obviously the longer that you save it, the more that that becomes true. That's a really dumb reason not to read a book. And because of the way that I've ended up with so many books that I haven't read, I'm at a point where I just really want to make myself say, you know what, stop being stupid, just read the books. Like, you bought it because you thought you'd enjoy it. You either have to get rid of it because you don't think you'll enjoy it anymore, or you have to just stop being afraid, because like it's literally just a book. It's not gonna do anything. So yeah, I'm gonna read this, and I don't know what to expect, but I think that it's one of those books that is probably going to be almost like Convenience Store Woman, where the concept of it's not necessarily like you read it and it's openly like emotional in that sort of way, but you connect with the characters and you read the stuff and you feel like there's more than what's being said, and it's intentionally more than what's being said. And so you read it and you really connect to it. That's what I'm hoping this is going to be. I'm hoping it's going to be maybe similar to the film Juno, in the way that it deals with like the emotional beats and stuff like that. I don't know, but I have like high hopes and I just want to get it read. That was one of the ones on my 10 to the end, and I didn't do it. But I think it's a new me this year. It is not a new me. But yeah, the longest one on this list, to sort of do a little bit of a 180 from where we've been going, Build Your House Around My Body. That is what it is. I was like, I just had to double check. I bought this again, I think this was like 2020, 21 maybe. Apparently it's signed, so I didn't know that. That'll be why I bought it when I bought it. That and the fact that this cover is absolutely gorgeous. Are we kidding? Ooh. I will say that page has been stuck in, because you can just kind of tell. But it like is one of those books that has like absolutely stunning like the different pages and stuff. Do you want to tell me? 2021, yeah. Like, can you see that? This is like one of those books that I bought because I was like, this looks really beautiful. And it's set in, I believe, Vietnam. Yeah. So it's about Oh, and there's a map. Love that. I thought it looked really cool, and like the way that because it's about, let me read the thing, sorry, because it's been, also that green, that's beautiful. Yeah, two young women go missing decades apart, and basically it's the teenage daughter of a wealthy Vietnamese family and an unhappy Vietnamese American woman living in Vietnam, and the two women are connected. I don't even care to know more than that going in. This to me has similar sort of vibes as Cahokia Jazz, in the sense that like it's gonna be about an overarching story set on a smaller scale so that it unfolds as you're reading it. Again, this is one where like the writing style I'm hoping I will vibe with, because I think sometimes it's hard to tell, right? It seems like I will like it. It seems like the kind of writing that I'll be interested in. I'm pretty sure this is like literary, but it does seem to me like I picked this up very much for a reason when I picked it up. And it's just one of those ones that I've been like waiting for the right opportunity. And I didn't used to read so many books about like crime and mystery and blah 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 blah. And so I think I kind of was afraid to start it because I was like, well, what if I don't like it? But I have started to read more crime books. I think on like my more general TBR, I actually have the second book in the series for Sweet Pea, which is called In Bloom. That's, I guess, like a crime. I still have a few Stephen Kings that I want to read. We're reading, you know, like other books and stuff, obviously. But I think that I'm just really interested for it. Like I don't know anything about it, and I'm trying not to, because again, it's like the thing where I said with this, right? I don't want to know I don't want to guess what's happening. I don't want to try and figure that stuff out. Like if I figure it out naturally, I will, but I'm not going to actively think about it. I will think about the book, but I'm not going to think about, because I think that there's just a certain quality of, you know, these sorts of novels where it's really difficult, right? Sometimes to enjoy a book like this and to appreciate what's really going on if your mind the whole time that you're reading it is on the who, the when, the why, the what, rather than the actual prose itself and the characters themselves and the way in which the story unfolds, which is often, I think, the more beautiful thing. Like if you think about, you know, a really clever detective novel, it would be less impressive if that really great detective novel idea and like the plot was done in a way that was like rushed, or that didn't really leave a lot of suspense and a lot of, you know, threads that seemed separate that came together. That is when books like this really shine, is when I'm going to ignore that and just pretend that I didn't hear it until I'm done. But I think that when you have a book that is set in another culture and deals with especially like two missing people from that culture, it is just as important to read the book and to learn from it about what it's like in a certain country or in a certain culture within the family dynamics and stuff like that, as it is to actually like follow the plot and be trying to guess what happened to who and when and where. You know, this is going to sound like a really stupid thing to say, but it's like when you're playing Cluedo, yes, you're trying to guess who did what, when, where, and with what weapon, but it wouldn't be a fun game if there weren't like things that you did in between that, you know? The fun thing is watching other people pick up cards and stuff and, figure stuff out on their own and you trying to like read their reactions. Like there's stuff that's around the meat, and that is what usually makes a story memorable for me. And I think that it's really, especially like the name of this book, it feels like one of those where you're gonna come away from it and you're gonna really just get the full picture after you've finished, and it's gonna be like, wow, like I'm glad that I waited until now to see everything as it is, you know? That's my TBR. It's literally 6 books, including one that I'm already reading, so it's basically 5. I don't know if this is something that I'm gonna get through super quickly or not. In theory, I could finish 2 or 3 more books in January, but I think if I go for like 4 a month, that's close enough. And yeah, I don't know. I'm having a pretty, I would say, good reading month so far. I've been enjoying what I've been reading. That is all I can ask for, and I'm just trying to push myself a bit to read the books that I've been afraid of this year, and that includes 5 books that I have been waiting to read for a while and one that is newer but like is in a genre that I'm not as comfortable in, and that pushes me, you know? And I think that's part of the beauty of this season of the podcast, is that we're doing books that I've already read. So I don't really, apart from the ones that I haven't really read super recently, I don't have to think about it. I'm good, you know? But I'm gonna read some of these. I'll get back in my next TBR video, whenever that is. I don't remember when the last one was, a while ago. I think I have a few books that I will probably put on the next one if I haven't read them by then, but we'll see. And again, if you want to see a video of recommendations of just like easy to read literary, like, you know, solid books, I'm more than happy to do that. But literally just let me know and I'll jump at the chance. Things are a bit of a mess in my life right now, but I'm trying to keep this channel going because I'm interested, and I'm gonna do another writing video soon because I'm actually on like chapter 5 of my book and I'm about 20k in, and I think I'm gonna do a video about part, like the overlap between part 1 and part 2, like transferring, because that's going to be a really significant part of the story. And oh yeah, I was going to do a video about Magnolia Parks. I'm not doing that on YouTube because I don't have enough new stuff to say that other people haven't already mentioned, but I did a TikTok, I will leave a link in the description, and it's like 10 minutes, but it's just me talking about Magnolia Parks and basically everything that I was going to say in the video. So yes, have a good one. Thank you for watching, and bye.